How many people from engineering here? Okay, quite a few. So when I say respect the right side, it's the creative side. So right side of your brain, right? So I'm an engineer myself, and one of the things that I've realized early on is I suck at creativity. So it's a skill I don't possess, so I end up respecting it a lot more, right? Whether it is design, whether it's creativity, whether it is I think the emotional part comes slightly differently. But when I say respect the right side, it's about the creative ability of people within your team or the talent that is available, right? Know that if you are able to bring the right combination of the analytical ability and the creative side, it'll be a rock star team. So respect the right side. Unlearn. This was a very, very bitter experience for me. So I lived in the US for a few years, then moved back to India, then moved to Hyderabad, and I started a failed restaurant business for a few months. So one of the biggest learnings over there was I'd come from the US, right? So everything was like, I was expecting things to be a certain way. I was expecting people to be ethical. If that guy says that he'll show up at 10 o'clock, he will, right? So, so all of those things. There was a lot of unlearning that you have to go through yourself. Always question what you've learned so far and say, can I think about it from a fresh perspective? And that will allow you to leave your baggage. Otherwise, what ends up happening is sometimes the learnings that you've had through life, depending on what your experiences are, those learnings end up becoming the baggage for you to think afresh. So always be ready to unlearn. Right. So this is a big one. Reputation is the new currency. The reason I say this is because what ends up happening is the ecosystem in the startup ecosystem or even the business ecosystem is fairly small, right? So every time you're talking to somebody, always think about what is the long-term implication of that. You can always, fool the guy and get away with, right? There's ways we can do that, with our talking or with our ability to convince or whatever, right? You can get away with it. But remember how your reputation is going to be a few years down the road, because word goes around. If if people get if I get the reputation that I am unethical, right? Regardless however successful or however innovative my ideas might be or however hard I might decide to work, people will discount me. They'll say, yaar ye banda theek nahi hai, right? So remember that making money and all of that will happen, right? There's enough to go around, as I'm saying. There's enough to go around. Our turn will also come. But remember that the only way you'll be able to build a strong team, and see, all of my team, Niranjan is here, few others in my team, everybody in my senior management team, both at Zippr as well as my other company, come from people that I've known in my past life. And for them to take that leap of faith and come and join a startup that we are doing only means that I've managed to keep my reputation intact. So, and they believe that this guy is not going to screw us around. Right, so reputation becomes very, very important. It's okay to walk away from a deal. It's okay to walk away from some additional money or some profit or whatever. It's fine, you will get the benefits of that later. But please remember that reputation is the new currency. It's not money. People, startups will fail. People will go on to do other startups. But if you're able to keep your reputation intact, when you're doing your next startup, then it becomes that much more easier because you're able to rely on your contacts. So those are some quick learnings, right? Of course, these apply to me. I've given you some examples of how I've come to sort of think about them. Also wanted to quickly talk about opportunities. So one of the biggest opportunities, India's transformation from an IT services to a product economy, right? So we've obviously been an IT services powerhouse for the last, I know you took your name, but yeah, so we're sort of transitioning to a product economy, which means a lot of intrinsic consumption that is happening within India. So products and services that can then be developed for India. Zippr is a perfect product of that, where it's an India first problem, it's an India first solution. So the product that we build is for India, but they're seeing tremendous interest outside of India. Countries in a few countries in Africa, Eastern Europe, that are saying, hey, can we use a solution like this, because our postal format is also broken. So there's enough, that when you start to think about it from a product perspective, India is going through the transformation as we speak. Hardware, yes, it's an option. We've all been sort of sucked into this software world, right? But what you've seen over the last 2 or 3 years is that, with the Internet of Things and being able to, having all of these connected devices, right? Being able to build intelligent hardware products is also an option, It wasn't before. For example, with the launch of funding portals like Kickstarter, where you build a prototype and you put it up on Kickstarter and ask people to pre-purchase, right? There's this one watch which is the most famous one, was called Pebble, which is a smart watch. So it launched almost like 2 years ago now, and then you could pre-purchase it, and when they were ready, when they had enough orders, they basically used that money to go procure or go build out that hardware. So those kind of avenues are now available. So don't think of everything has to be a software solution, right? And not everything, now we are a connected global economy, right? So it doesn't mean that everything has to be built within India only, right? So you build prototypes, then you get it done, manufactured somewhere else. So hardware is an option. It wasn't a few years ago because of the prohibitive costs, but now it is. Make in India. So this was obviously the hashtag from Modi's campaign. But one thing that we have definitely seen is that the political climate is now much more conducive to startups, right? So I'll give you a perfect example. So two things have happened for us here in the state. One is the formation of a new state and new government, new initiatives. Now there's this healthy competitive spirit between Telangana and AP. At the same time, at the center, we have a stable government. So what has happened for, I'll give you a live example with Zippr, is that we were able to actually get in front of government departments to figure out how we can use Zippr. Whereas, 2 or 3 years ago, I would not have thought that would have been possible because there was too much baggage that they were carrying. Now there's sort of a fresh sort of outlook to things. And they're hitting on the right initiatives. So I would say that, Make in India is a big piece of it. And, you guys have to capitalize on it. So think of opportunities that you can solve for India, and then some of those can apply in sort of a global market as well. So before everything was, we export our services or whatever products that we were building to other countries. But now I think making in India and consuming in India and then applying that formula for a global market, I think that's a definite possibility right now. So we are living in an era, I would say, that we'll be very thankful for 20, 30 years down the road. So recognize this. You guys are at the right age to be taking on some of these challenges and opportunities. If you look at Zippr, we've been cribbing about the address system for the longest of times, and in fact over the last year and a half, I've had at least 25, 30 cases of people saying, yeah, I had the same idea. And I had a lot of people say that, right? Good, right? I've had 30 other ideas which I never worked on, and we decided to work on Zippr. So ideas don't mean anything, right? Unless you start working on them. Of course, I've had a book full of ideas, a folder full of ideas, everybody, and I've noticed this only in the last 3 or 4 months, that everybody said, you know what, I have a folder in my computer that says business ideas. And each one of them have spent so many days like working through a full business plan and all of that. I've had so many of those myself. But unless you start executing on those ideas, they don't mean squat, guys. Right? Of course, you have to take your time to pick the right ideas. You have to do the right sort of initial, experiments to figure out if this is what you want to pursue. But that is one. So ideas don't mean anything. The second one is you have to drive it with passion. There are a couple of people that always ask me, so you've done 2 startups, no? What's your 3rd startup? Right? So I was like, this is it. I think I've hit what Zippr appeals to me at many, many levels. And I feel I can make a huge impact. And for me, my biggest, and you have to have a goal for yourself in life, right? For me, my biggest goal is, can you build a product that can outlive you? So think about it, right? So of course, all of us have different motivations, different interests. For me, this was it. Can I build a product or service that can outlive me, that can be used by a broad section of people? And so I said, this is it. If for any reason Zippr doesn't take off or whatever, tab dekhenge yaar. But for now, I'm not doing a 3rd startup. And that's easy for people to ask. Oh, you built a cool product, what next? So it doesn't work that way with startups. Cool, that's it, I think. All right, cool. Any questions, guys? Right.
So as you go on increasing the number of people, so
correct.
How do you plan to manage, since you have multi-platforms,
Right.
You have SMS, you have calls, and you have
Right.
So how do you plan to manage all those things? And there will be so much redundancy also.
Correct. What do you mean by redundancy?
For example, if all of us give the address here
Mm-hmm.
of the same place, there will be a lot of redundancy of the same address.
Correct.
So how do you manage all that?
Right. So a couple of things. What ends up happening is in the beginning you have to seed your markets, right? So what we've done is we've taken, these are all experiments here. We don't know what's going to be successful. We're still going through that journey right now. So what we've done is initially we launched our Android and iOS apps, asked people to create Zippr codes and stuff like that, right? What we've noticed is people generally have a tendency to want to see immediate value to the product before they want to invest any effort into it. So what we've done in the last few months is actually we are commissioning out Zippr codes for every apartment, for example. So we're launching a campaign next week called Har Ghar Zippr, where we're going to basically giving, and we're doing this only in Hyderabad. So obviously this cannot scale to the rest of the country. There has to be network effect that takes off somewhere. For us, the biggest network effect challenge that we have is, acha, you have a Zippr code, where else are you going to use it? Right? That's the biggest challenge, right? So for us, I have to be able to talk to a whole bunch of businesses and say, you know what, now you can take Zippr as a new address format. Then they're going to ask me, oh, how many people are on Zippr? So same chicken and egg problem that we have. So the way that we are trying to solve it is, we are saying that certain markets we are going to seed, and then give a test bed for like a Domino's or a Flipkart or a Miru Cabs to say, acha, this market you can start taking a Zippr code because there's enough penetration of Zippr. But in terms of how you manage channels and redundancy and stuff like that, I think that the market will tell. When I talked about in the video, I talked about the SMS channel, right? That is more applicable to India. In a country like Korea or in the US, it may not be that applicable because everybody has internet. But you have to recognize the local factors and then create solutions or products that address that. So and then 3 years later we may retire the SMS channel, right? You have to constantly be evaluating all of those channels to see what sort of utility they have and what is your cost of managing such a channel. But at this point of time, I think it's we are in that experiment phase where we have to try a few things to see which one will be successful. Yeah.
The cost were pretty high.
Right.
Then how you are integrating and what is the revenue model? How you are going to get the money?
Correct. Two different questions, right? One is how you're managing you keep down costs, and second is what is your revenue model, right? So the first one, obviously, once this takes off, right? So I'll give you guys a little tidbit. So we over the last couple of days, so that's why it's not on the slides. Over the last couple of days, we've signed a contract with GHMC, where they're saying that the new house number will be a Zippr code. Right. So as a result of that, your all 21 lakh houses in Greater Hyderabad by default will be given a Zippr code by GHMC, and they are going to be managing the SMS gateway costs and stuff like that. As far as we are concerned, our revenue monetization is going to come from the businesses, where tomorrow if I just call Domino's and give a Zippr code, that has to be reverse geocoded, or you have to have some exposure of information that is behind a Zippr code, right? Whether it is the full address, the picture, the GPS coordinates, the directions, and all of that stuff. So we will be charging the businesses to reverse look up all that information. So our business model is going to come from that. Obviously, we see a whole bunch of other business models around hyperlocal and all that, but that's the one that we're going to start with. So you have to figure out enough strategic partnerships where the value is obviously a citizen value, right, of being able to SMS a Zippr code and get the full address. So we're seeing if GHMC can own those costs. This is for Hyderabad. Of course, for other markets, as we pick up, we'll figure out different ways in which we can do it.
Your second startup is Medium, right?
So yeah, the first startup is Medium Mint. So that was started 4 years ago. So Zippr is my second stint. Yeah. Medium Mint.
Medium Mint.
Yeah.
It's still around?
Yeah. I juggle. So, but
Oh, between the two,
How
you're
that Medium
okay.
is going
So-
on? It's a news website I came to know.
no, it's not a news website. It's an online advertising services company. So it is also fairly large. It's about 180 people, and that's been growing also quite well since I started paying less attention to it. So, so that's what I tell my team. So
It's about hiring smarter people than you are, right?
yeah, absolutely. And I think that
It's
comes
a mantra that works
Absolutely.
in many places, I think.
And I think what I've seen is two things, right? One is hiring people that are smarter than you, hiring people that are that you have to pay more than what you're worth.
Yep.
I think one of the biggest challenges that I've seen, especially at middle management, is right. So they hesitate to hire people that are better than them, thinking that, acha, mere ko itna, I have to pay him more to get. So then I'm only going to look for people where the ceiling on his, I'm taking compensation as an example, but this compensation has to be lower than mine, right? So that kills your ability to scale the business. So I've seen many managers that have passed through that phase, where they realize they're only going to be as successful as the people that you hire. So in some cases, you hire people that are more expensive than you, and I think it's perfectly all right. That I've seen happen is very prevalent in the US. I'm hoping that will happen here in India too.
So a couple of questions, second year MBA students. I think they're at a position, they're at a juncture in their life where they're trying to figure out, do I go to a job post my graduation, or do I maybe potentially start something on my own? How did that decision unfold for you? This is your second startup. Did you work?
Yeah, so I worked for a few years. I worked for a few in the US, yeah. Okay. So I worked with an online advertising company for 5 years.
Okay. So at what point did you go crazy and decide to start up? And
for me,
what was the process?
Right. For me, it was. I would say it was a very easy decision. You know, I always wanted to do something of my own. I've done a whole bunch of stuff while I was in college and stuff like that. But you know, US wouldn't allow me to do it, so I decided to move back to India. Okay. Because of my green card. You know, you have to have a green card to start your own business. So I had slightly different reasons. But one thing that I have seen is, and I will tell you this is, in the past. So you know, when you know, this was in 2010, right? Seems like quite long ago. But one thing that I will tell you in terms of how people perceive companies. In the US, if you went on to do a startup of your own, the startup failed, that counts as legitimate experience when you go back to pick up a job. In India, a few years ago, people always felt that, acha, 2-3 years you went on to do something of your own, what was your salary before that? Right? They completely discounted the learnings that you had as a startup, which I think is ridiculous. Now that is changing. If you go on to, so I'm giving you a little assurance, go on to do something of your own. If it doesn't work, you would have learned a hell lot, and there is merit and value attributed to that experience when you go on to pick up a job. Right? If I'm trying to bring somebody on board, if they've done a startup, I value them much more highly than I would if, you know, he was just in large companies and, you know, then the amount of exposure or, you know, was not as much. So that's the way I would put it. Right. That's a contrast that I'm seeing, you know, happen in the last 4-5 years in India.
So when you started your first startup, you started it?
Yeah.
Media Mint.
Yeah.
Why Media Mint? Were there several other ideas you were considering? How did you narrow down on Media
Right.
Mint?
So
that's another thing, right? Ideas are a million.
Yeah.
Execution is what matters all
right,
the time.
right.
How did you select on an idea, and then help us understand a little bit about it?
Right. So I didn't select Media Mint as my primary idea. My restaurant business was my primary idea. So I basically moved back to, I was in Delhi for a few months, but moved back to Hyderabad to be like a McDonald's for Indian food. Right. So where you said that, you know, you have food and chutneys at 180 rupees thali, then you have your mess at 30-40 rupees. Can I provide you something in between where you won't get food fatigued? You probably eat there every day, but you know, it's high quality food. That was the idea. Lot of things that were wrong about it, you know, primarily being, you know, I had zero experience. I had come back from the US and I had to go chase cooks and dosa masters and, you know, water tankers. You know, I did all of that for like 6-8 months, and I felt I wasn't the right guy. So I'll tell you what my biggest learning over there was, and when it hit me that was not a business that I should be in. You know, I sat down. We had signed so we had a central kitchen. So we went about it entirely the wrong way. Okay, so we first set up the central kitchen. I would say first go out and, you know, start your restaurant. It's okay, then you can figure out scale and all that jazz, right? But we first started thinking about scale. Acha, my central kitchen lagaunga, then I'm going to have multiple locations and all of that. But the biggest reason why I decided to shut down that company was because I felt that, am I the guy in this restaurant, right? Am I the guy that would go up to a guest at a table and ask him, how's your food? Right? And I didn't see myself doing that. If you didn't see yourself doing that, please don't do it. Right? And then I realized just because you like food doesn't mean you can become a food entrepreneur.
That's
Yeah.
about ownership and accountability. I think he hit them on the head. Taking ownership of the product and being accountable, being able to go up to a guest and say, and be able to take the feedback, hey, you could do much better than this.
Yeah, or
You know
this
what I mean?
sucks.
Or this sucks.
They're not going to mince words, right? So, so
sucks.
yeah. So I think for me that was the big reason I said, I don't see myself doing this. I see myself dragging out of bed every morning doing this business, and I didn't see myself scaling. All the other restaurants that have multiple locations had himself running one, his brother running one, his brother-in-law running something else. So they basically was a kuturi, right, of people that are close to them trying to run. I said I can't scale this. I didn't come back to run one restaurant. I wanted to obviously see it at scale. So I would say all this market size and all of that is good, but it means nothing if you are not passionate about it. Right? We wanted to be in the retail business, and I liked food. So I was like, oh, this is a wonderful combination. I'm going to open restaurants. Right? So it was the wrong formula. I wasn't passionate about running a business on food. So I shut it down. So then MediaMint came about more as your plan B, right? Because I had already done online advertising for about 5 years in the US.
Okay.
So, and I knew that there was a latent sort of talent need globally for setting up and optimizing online advertising campaigns. So I said, okay, so then I went back to my network in the US and said, hey, I moved back to India, I want to get back into the business. And that's where Reputation came along, right? And because I had sort of maintained my reputation intact over the 5 years that I'd been with the company, all the people that then moved on to become senior executives at other media firms then immediately said, you know what, I can trust this guy. And one of the biggest challenges that we have with offshoring companies is that you don't trust the company, right? And because I kept my reputation, I thought hopefully intact, and that helped us quickly build out the business. That helped us get to like 30 people or so, but after that it really, some of the other moves that we made, that's really at a scale that we are right now.
Okay. Question?
Yeah.
How important do you think having a co-founder when you have a thought of having a startup?
Correct.
What is your take? Like, as you said, you have worked for 5 years and you had several ideas.
Right.
So what was going on in your mind when you have that thought of startup?
Right.
Do you really need a co-founder?
Right.
Do you have a co-founder for Zippr?
No, I don't.
MediaMint?
No.
Restaurant business?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So for me, I'm a bad example, I would say, because both MediaMint and Zippr, somewhat started alone. MediaMint, I did start. My wife was also involved. She was a computer science engineer, and our first project that we got was in building an ad serving system. So she helped us out, get started there, and she sort of continued in the business. But I would say it's a roller coaster ride, and so I'll tell two things. One, it's a roller coaster ride, which means you need to, when you're going through that lull, right, you need to have the right support system to help you come back up. That coming back up, I was fortunate enough to, for example, my wife, she knew about online advertising through second person, like, because I was constantly talking about it at home and stuff like that, right? So it wasn't a very alien subject for her. So at least I was able to sort of, I had somebody that I could talk to about it and relate to, right? So, so if the co-founder, right, with the right complementary skill set, will give you that support system. You guys need to get back up, right? I've had so many roller coaster days. My morning is awesome and my evening sucks, right? How do you get through that emotional roller coaster? And that's where I think a co-founder helps. Of course, in my case, I date a long time. In the sense, like, I have to know the person for a while before I can get to marry that person. And co-founder relationship is like that. Folks like Niranjan and all, I didn't get to meet them, in my early days of starting, which is why, it's how it is. But I would say that, if you find somebody that you love to work with, jump in, right? And keep the other things in mind: reputation, your moral compass, expectations minus reality equal to frustration. Keep that in mind. It's working for me. Please.
Basically, you mean to say the working style has to match?
Working style has to match. Your passion has to be equivalent, right? You may be doing different things, but your passion has to be the same. Right. So I will tell you. So I did not, so I don't want to kid people here saying I had to go through financial trouble to do it, because for me when I started Medium Mint, it's a services company, right? And because I had my reputation intact, I was able to sign my first contract even before I had incorporated my company. So I didn't face through financial constraints. But what I will tell you is, and by the time I started Zippr, I had committed myself to bootstrapping Zippr myself. So for the first year, I put money out of pocket to get Zippr to where it is, because I know that to go to an investor for an idea like Zippr, you need to show certain things in place, product, traction, things like that. But I will tell you that there's we're starving for ideas, and this I can tell you because in the last few months I've been interacting with a lot more investors, that openness to funding ideas that can potentially take off, or have a very low probability of taking off also. There's enough guys out there that are willing to take a bet, right? So I think if you have that conviction, if you have the right idea, and you're able to present it well, I think there is more avenues that you have today than you did a few years ago. Before, only thing that you had to do was collateral and get a loan, right, from a bank. I don't think that's the case now. There's enough avenues out there.
And if I may just add to that, within the tech sector, right, tech-related startups, if we can shift our mindset every time we think of the word investor, if we can replace it with a consumer or a client or a customer, I think we'd be doing ourselves a great service, right? Every company goes through financial strain. I mean, Aditya may be an exception. His journey may be an exception, but I bet you 99.9% of startups will face some financial strain. However, if you can learn how to build a revenue-funded enterprise versus a venture-funded enterprise, you'll do yourself a great service. That doesn't mean venture money is not needed, otherwise we wouldn't be in business, right? But to his point, there are n number of investor groups, angel networks, seed and acceleration and incubation hubs that are willing to look at proven ideas, to some extent proven. When I say proven, ideas that you can demonstrate have customer validation, right?
Right.
So
I think those accelerators, incubators provide sort of a good stepping stone, right?
yes.
Where they will pick up some equity, they may or may not give you money, but I think it's to stay afloat, right? It's not really about, I'll tell you, since we've raised our first round of funding, nothing has changed. We're still chasing our vision, because when you have, when you know what you're chasing is clear, right? So, I'll give you a simple example. This was in the US, and I think that was a very big learning for me. Is that for me, I was chasing this figure, so that I need to get $100,000 in salary, right? And one day I did, right? Nothing changed. Nothing changed, right? I still woke up in the morning, went to work. Nothing changed. So whatever, if you have a financial goal, right? That financial goal, unless it is driven by need. Let's put that need aside for a second. But if you have a pure financial goal that I had, like I need to get to a certain salary, I don't know why that goal even existed. It seems foolish now, but nothing changes after that, right? But if you are able to build something of value, that changes things. So in the first few months or a year, now you have enough stepping stones to get to that customer validation point that she's talking about. Don't focus too much on what the money actually means, right? It's what it can bring.
Expectations, what part do they play in your decision making? Do they force you anywhere about
No. So I don't know if I'm the exception. So for me, this is the first time raising money. So I went through a journey for the first time recently. But one thing that I will tell you is that at least on the angel side, the guys that have invested in our company. So two things: we've gotten funded by Indian Angel Network and a few other private investors. But Indian Angel Network is a large group of investors, right? Where what they're doing is they're taking sort of early stage bets, right? So whatever money that we raised, it was raised over 30 people that formed the network, right? That are part of our investor group. So some of them have put in more money. They are called lead investors, so sit on our board and stuff like that. But a lot of these guys are betting on you and the idea that they've heard from you, right? If they don't have the time to come and chase or make you pivot before you have failed, right? So I'm not seeing that kind of involvement from them that would make me uncomfortable. I was very uncomfortable. So I'll tell you one thing. I was very uncomfortable about outside investment because I always felt, I had the worry that you are having. But one thing that helped me sort of set it right was that a lot of these guys are managing someone else's money, right? The same way that you feel that you have to answer to them, they have to answer back to the people that they're managing funds for. So it's not a personal, if they're taking your case, right, and pushing you harder, it's not because it's their money. Some guys it's their money in the angel side, but on the, especially on the institutional funding, it's not their money. They're also managing and they're also trying to hit certain targets. So that made me feel a lot more comfortable, talking to somebody, that they also have to evaluate the right businesses, invest in the right ones, and show the return to their investors.
Sir, now that you're launched Zippr, what do you think is the next stage you plan to move in, and other cities also you're trying to grow?
Right.
And then how do you fight off competition? Say,
Right.
And the other question is, now your app is free. In future, will it be priced or something?
Right. So few questions there in one question, but
Where is Zippr now in terms of what metrics are you measuring? Is it number of downloads? Is it number of addresses?
Right. So I think we initially when we started chasing downloads.
Okay.
But what we figured is Zippr is as much as as an app-based solution as it is an offline solution. So what we're doing is, we've, as I mentioned, right, we're launching this campaign Har Ghar Zippr, right, where you don't have to have an app. All that you need is you'll see a board in front of your building that says this is the Zippr code for your building, and you can just go on to Google or Zippr and just type in that code, and that will give you directions to go there. So while initially we were chasing downloads, I think what we've now realized is two things. One is the number of addresses that we are able to bring onto the platform, and second is the number of transactions that we are able to see on that as a result of that Zippr being enabled. Either people using that Zippr to get to places and stuff like that.
Is that information okay for public disclosure?
In terms of what we are chasing?
Transactions, or what's the volume? How many addresses are coming online?
Yeah. So
Daily,
no, we're slightly under 100.
Understand.
Right. So we're slightly under 100,000 users on the platform.
Okay.
Right. So obviously seeing a few thousand daily actives, thousands of transactions of people. अच्छा मैं आपको zipper code भेजता हूँ. You use that to navigate to places, and we've seen very interesting examples, right? So for example, somebody very recently, he was vacating his house. So he's like, this is where my house is, and he gave a zipper code. People are there've been at least about 3 or 4 New Year parties across India that happened in farmhouses and stuff like that. That ended up giving a zipper code for the farmhouse. Very different use case. Of course, we have the use case of 108, right? The ambulance service, where we've had a few cases where people just gave a zipper code and an ambulance was dispatched. So for us also to focus on which is that use case that I should talk about is also important, because if I talk too much about the 108 app, people will say 108 integration. People will say, oh, this is an emergency code, right? We don't want to be branded that way, so we have to be a little careful, and to answer your question about how do we ward off competition, I think you have to be very clear as to what your value proposition is. I'll tell you very quickly. So and we've gone through this stage of confusion before, but there's two aspects. One is where are you now, which is your current location. The other is what's your address. There are a lot of apps and services that are solving the where are you now problem, including WhatsApp, anybody, right? Zomato, anywhere. Because you have a damn smartphone with a GPS sensor, anybody can tell where you are right now. But so we are chasing what's your address, because we feel that is far more richer and valuable, right? Because that tells me, the fact that I'm driving through road number 36 doesn't tell me anything about the user. It just tells me he's there. Maybe I can give him a real-time coupon. But if I'm racing to work, what good is a coupon for me, right? And real time. But if you were able to give me a coupon that is closer to my home address, that's much more valuable. So we are chasing the what's your address piece, which I don't think anybody is really going after. Everybody is going after the where are you now. So
in the interest of time, 2 last questions.
Yeah.
They initially think that they want to do it for the rest of their lives, but what happens is they grow big and some very
right? As I told you, before I told you, right, that $100,000 story. So I've that story is done for me.
But there have been cases like WhatsApp and all those things which have initially started to
Co-
succeed, but
Correct. So
If I can reword the question, what's the exit story you told IAM?
I didn't. I
Or
didn't.
did they ask?
No, they didn't ask. So I'll tell you, in the case of Zippr, the way I see it is very simple. You know, Zippr is a product or service that has to see its phases of evolution. During that evolution process, if it means that we have to be under the umbrella of a larger company, we will be under the umbrella of a larger company. So I don't think it's going to be the allure of money, but it's going to be chasing that vision. So our vision is transforming what's your address to what's your Zippr. So during that journey, whoever we feel is going to be the right partner for us to get there, you know, we'll do that. So I don't see it as an I don't see it as an exit. I see it as a way for, you know, taking it to the next level. It's like, you know, taking off a spaceship, right? You get onto sort of the orbital velocity, and every stage you sort of fire off, right? So what will give you that thing to fire off to escape velocity?
One last question.
So what we learned from your presentation that right now your target market is urban people. So it is easy to explain them about your app and the benefits of Zippr. How do you approach the rural people, which comprise of 80% of the population, and how do you explain them the benefits?
Correct. So I gave you an example of us tying up with GHMC, right, the municipal authority. So what we anticipate is that will sort of have its own sort of parallel path, where we've had at least a few other districts, both in Telangana and Karnataka, that said that, hey, we want to commission out Zippr codes to every house, and then start to enable a lot of services via SMS using Zippr. Because think about it, right? So a lot of our products and services that come to our house need an explanation of an address. If that can be replaced with a Zippr code, then it becomes so much more efficient. So the way that we see this is there is going to be a sort of a government initiative or a government-driven initiative that takes off on one path. The other path is you know, the private sector, where your e-commerce, your cab services, and all of these guys, right? So of course we will piggyback on the governments to take that initiative to the broader masses. But there's a lot of ways in which you can do that. You know, India is doubling on smartphone penetration every year. You know, we were at 230. You know, last year we'll probably be closer to 450 to 500 this year. So we'll be surprised as to how quickly that adoption will happen. You know, Wi-Fi zones are coming through. So what I'm saying is that that whole access to data is going to become much more available in the next few years. So you have to build products and services that play nicely with that evolving framework, right? 100 smart cities, you know, these are all buzzwords, but I think once they get to a point where their rubber meets the road, we want to be a solution that is still relevant in that age, right? Today we know there's a pain point and all that relevance, right? But will it be relevant in tomorrow's age? And we feel that it's going to be.
Great. So one last question.
Sure.
Several of the students are going to be placement ready in several months, right?
Sure.
Maybe by summertime or so. What sort of skill sets do you guys hire for?
Right.
Both in Media Mint
And
Zippr.
yeah.
And how can they prepare themselves with specific skill sets?
Right. So I'll give a slightly different view of it, because we sort of go through hiring challenges very actively right now. So one of there's two aspects. One is skill, the other is attitude. And you've heard this many times, right? And you know, I'm so vexed with seeing people that have the wrong attitude. That I have to bring it up. You know, tools, skill, all that can be developed here. But if you come in with an attitude, so I'll give you a simple example, and it might be a little controversial. But if I hire people from very reputed colleges, right? And I've done this at Media Mint as well. When I hire people from those kind of colleges, they come with a chip on their shoulder, right? They have a certain amount of superiority. Yeah, why am I doing this? But I have to do it. I don't need those people, because they're detrimental to the business. They're detrimental to the organization. So please come in with So two things, right? One is how would you have that right attitude is if you pick up a job you like. Don't go on to pick up a job you don't like, because you're not doing anybody a favor. Right? You might be thinking that, yeah, you're definitely not doing yourself a favor, but to think that you're doing the company a favor, boss, you're not. Right? And we've had to let really good people go. They were good skill-wise, out of this world, attitude-wise wrong. Right? So my suggestion would be pick a gig that you like and do it wholeheartedly. Then the attitude will be right. Right? For some people, you may feel that doing something may be beneath me. It's okay. Then pick a job that you like. Don't go on to pick something that is beneath you and then crib about it. That's all I would say to this.
Great. Well, thank you, Aditya.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you.